Hey Ashley, how you doing today?
Oh, I'm doing all right, man. How are you
Good.
doing?
Good. Doing all right. So what's been going on?
Oh, nothing. I've just slipped back into it. I mean, I know we were talking when I first came in here about how I used to use and abuse, and I've just been slipping back, and I just can't figure out how to get back out because I mean this PTSD I got. Sometimes the memories are too much, and my current situation's too much, and I just I guess it's a way for me to cope, and I'm fully acknowledge the fact that it's not a very productive way for me to cope. But I mean, God, what else can I do in my current situation?
Right. Well, I'd like to start off by saying I definitely hear your concerns and frustrations, and I'm also glad that you can see this from a perspective like knowing this hasn't been working and I need to do something different. So I want to commend you on that. That's great. I just want to remind you, this is, probably our third, fourth session or so. And just some of the disclosure, confidentiality wise, just as long as nothing is said that leads me to believe that any harm is being done to you or anyone else, then everything in the session is kept confidential. So I guess I just kind of want to try to maybe understand some of the antecedents, some of the triggers that go on that make you kind of feel, where you start to slip again.
Well, I tell you, I mean, you know my situation. You know that I have no place to live. I'm homeless, and it's like February right now, and it's really cold, and it's for some reason this year being really rainy. And when I'm walking around in the cold, in the rain, wet, exposing myself to all different kinds of sicknesses, I feel like I don't really have anything motivating me, so why not just go and, usually my thing is I'll go and, get some beers, or I'll go and get some, like, Grey Goose or some other really cheap vodka. But sometimes if I'm really slipping and I just don't feel like that's going to be enough for me, I'll do a couple lines of crack. I'm not ashamed to admit it. I'll do that. I hadn't done that in a while. Lately, it's just been me slipping on alcohol, but I wanted to come in and talk to somebody and try to get some, get a handle on this before I slid back into the crack,
So it kind of sounds like the general frustration from just not having a support system, a place to call home.
Yeah.
Things like that are kind of a major trigger for using. So just to be clear, the substances that you're, of your choice seems to be alcohol.
Yeah.
And occasionally, if things kind of get real bad, then you do crack, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Are there any other instances that you can think of that would be a trigger?
Well, I mean, I hang out with some of the other people that don't got no place to go. Of course, we just all get together because that's just the nature of people. They get together with people that are like themselves, and of course they don't help me because they abuse themselves and they drink themselves. And then then I try to go to some of these shelters, and they have no alcohol rules, but you'd be surprised how creative people can get.
Still get it in, huh? That makes it a little difficult when that's another. It should be a support system. But
it's really not. I mean, on the surface it is, but then, I might or might not get roomed with somebody who uses more than me, and they're like, hey, you want to swig off the bottle? And I'm like, hey, yeah.
Yeah. So that's, to me, it sounds like really the support systems and the lack of a place to call home, to feel safe, is a real significant trigger for substance abuse.
Yeah, for me anyway. I mean, I would like to think that if I had somewhere to go and if I had a support system, I wouldn't do it. I'm not going to say that I definitely wouldn't do it, but I'm sure that would, make me not want to do it as much as I want to do it now.
So I guess, Ashley, I kind of want to, we've talked about some of the triggers. So now I hope that we can try to understand maybe some of the consequences that go along with subduing to these triggers and abusing. Is there anything that you can think of that stands out that's a significant consequences in your life?
Well, I mean, friends that I used to have don't really want to be around me. They've just given up on me. They say, you know, well, you're always going to be an alcoholic or you're always going to be a drug addict. And then, you know, there's the other, you know, day-to-day consequences, like waking up with a horrible hangover on a park bench. That's not anything anybody wants to experience. And, you know, just things like that, and run out of money too. You know, like if I got $5 and I spend 3 of it on beers, I only got 2 to eat with.
So really, kind of sounds like to me just the general lack of homeless. You know, the lack of a proper home to stay in is really a big factor to consider. You know, so that also means that, I guess, you know, in terms of looking at the consequences that go along with abusing, you know, what can be done differently in order to, you know, because you've already said earlier, you know, in session that you realize that this is a bad thing, that you don't want to keep falling back into these traps. So, you know, trying to think about in terms of what can we do to prevent these things from continuing to happen and continuing to perpetuate the homeless situation. Does that make sense? And I'm not quite sure if we talked about this in past sessions, so I'm just going to bring it up real quickly. Have you ever been involved in a substance abuse program?
No, because, I mean, you know, a lot of them require insurance, and a lot of them, if you don't have insurance, you know, they'll take you in initially without it, and then you'll get called down to an office 3 days later. Oh, well, your insurance doesn't pay for us. Bye.
Right.
You know, I mean, I've wanted to go into some, but there just hadn't been none. Or if they're like, you know, like the ones that take TennCare and things like that, some of them are pretty sketchy. So I've been kind of leery on that end. So, but hey, if the VA has something, I'll be glad to go into it.
Okay. Well, that's definitely a wonderful strength to build off of. Because I was going to address it, but it's certainly something that I wouldn't address unless you showed interest. And obviously you're showing interest to make some changes. So basically the VA offers, it's a SATP program, Substance Abuse Treatment Program. And depending on the severity, depending on how you want to go about it, things like that, the course could take, you know, anywhere from like 8 to 16 weeks, just kind of depends. And then the beauty of this situation is if you decide to go in, you know, and this is just food for thought, Ashley, okay?
Yeah.
Just go in and, you know, have it in my mind. This is the time in my life I'm going to open a new chapter and do something just totally different and have a better outlook and positive life. So if you go into this SATP program and succeed, then basically the way the VA looks at it, they will consider that, okay, so Ashley has gone into this substance abuse treatment program. She's been in here for 16 weeks, so she's still considered homeless. So you would meet the criteria to be able to get a housing subsidy voucher so that, you know, you could have the majority of your rent and bills and stuff like that paid. Does that make sense? Would that be something that you'd be interested in trying out?
Yeah.
Okay.
You know, if I could get in because a lot of these housing things, they want you to have at least some sort of income, and I ain't got no job right now. I mean, you know, I sell little newspapers in the corner, and you know, that's how I get the money to do what I do. But you know, the thing is that you know, if I could get some place that could help out with the rent and the bills and not have such strict income guidelines, whereas if you have none, they won't accept you. You know, that'll be great.
A lot of it too will depend on the person's, you know, the veteran service connection. And with yours, I want to say last time I looked at it, it's like really high. You have probably like a 50 or 60% service connection. So that means that whatever place you decide to go, as far as a home, whether it's an apartment or places, you can even rent a house.
Okay.
And the voucher will work for a number of places, and you could do that. And basically the voucher will pay, you know, the percentage of your service connection. So if you're like 60% connected, then they'll pay 60% of your rent, and you pay the
Okay,
other 40 or
okay.
whatever. You know what I mean?
Okay.
So that's some long-term type of interventions
Right,
that we can
right,
think about.
right.
You know, so just kind of be thinking about that, and we'll discuss a little bit more
Okay.
in the future, and we'll start working on getting you enrolled into the SATP program within the VA.
Okay.
So that means, though, that you're going to have to come to classes specific times
yeah.
and days of the weeks, and you have to attend every single one, or they'll kick you
Yeah,
out, and then
yeah.
that means no housing voucher.
Right.
So, do you have any questions about any
No.
of that?
No.
You feel good about it?
Yeah.
Well, okay, so for the latter half of the session, I wanted to see if you might be comfortable trying to discuss and just look at some possible outcomes, like positive things that you can do when you start to have that trigger sensation. You know, like you said earlier, when you are around other people that, you know, they might not necessarily be your friend, but, you know, it's people that you're hanging out with, like in Salvation Army, places like that. Like maybe thinking about, you know, being creative here and thinking about some things that you can do when you start to feel those trigger responses, you know. Do you have any ideas on something like, what do you enjoy doing other than having a drink or, you know?
I enjoy walking, taking walks.
Okay. So that could be something that you could potentially do to get away if somebody's like, here, you want a shot of, you know, whatever. Instead of doing that, just go for a walk. Could you do that? Do you think that would help?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Well, think about that. And then I think you mentioned something too, a trigger though. It's like when you're walking down the street and there's like a beer corner, you know, beer market on the corner. So say if that situation arose and it triggered something, you know, and made you want to go into that beer store, and what could you think about that you could do differently instead of falling into that?
I could just walk by it.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, I could just think to myself, well, if I go in here and if I get this beer and if I start drinking, that's just going to lead to more drinking. That's just going to lead to the unpleasant consequences we were talking about before. And, you know, I would hope that I would have the willpower to be like, no, I need to not do, I mean, I'm about to go on this substance abuse treatment thing, for God's sake. The last thing I need to be doing is picking up another beer and you know, taking yet another drink. So I would hope that I would just be able to just walk on by it. And I mean, you know, do some breathing, not think about it, think about something else for a second until I get by it.
Good. So you've thought about this before. You know that, you know, a breathing technique is a good way to, you know, take your mind off of whatever's bothering you. And, you know, in terms of financially speaking, it's, you know, maybe you could try to think about taking that money that you would have spent on, you know, beer, cigarettes, whatever, and, you know, putting that towards something that is rewarding but also beneficial for you and not gonna, you know, break down your body in the long term.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Right, you know.
I don't know, you know, it's your personal business, but I don't know, you know, like say for instance, if you have a bank account, you know, you could try to start just filtering in, even if it's a few dollars at a time, you know, filtering in a little bit of money in there. And then, you know, say by the end of a quarter or something like that, you'll be like, oh, great, I have more money in there than I've had in a while, and it's because I've been, you know, good, and I haven't been, and so then you could go buy yourself something, or you could save that money and put that towards, you know, the housing situation once you're out of substance abuse treatment program. So, okay, so, would you be comfortable with doing a quick relaxation exercise?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I just kind of want to do like a deep breathing exercise. So, I guess and this kind of also we're going to do, it's kind of considered exposure therapy. So I guess think about in your mind the trigger. So say you're walking along, something happens, pisses you off, or just, you know, you come across a beer market and say, I want a beer. So, okay, I'm going to sit here with you and we're going to visualize that together.
Okay. All right.
And then from your diaphragm, from your stomach, breathe in really deep through your nose. Breathe out through your nose, or through your mouth, I'm sorry. Okay, let's try one more time. Breathe in. Breathe out. going to try one more. I know it helps me relieve a little stress. Just even if it's focusing on my own breathing, kind of takes away the the bad parts of the day to some degree.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I definitely appreciate you being open and coming to talk to me, and know that you can come and discuss anything at any time.
Sure.
You've got my card, my number.
Sure.
And like I said earlier, we're going to get you connected with the substance abuse treatment program.
Okay.
But also a part of it, too, is you showing interest. So I just want you to know that I can't necessarily, and I hope this doesn't sound mean, but I can't chase you down, because I want you to want it, and if you don't want it, then there's no point in me making, or anyone making you do it.
Right.
So, but it sounds like you're at the point that you're ready. You're ready for a new start, and that's great. So, you can do it.
Cool.
You can do it. So, thanks for coming to see me, Ashley.
Yeah,
Have a good one.
You too.